Mafia boss notices his maid hiding bruises with a broken arm. What he did next shocked the entire city. He stood behind her in that tense, breath-snatching moment, the kind that freezes the whole house even though no one else can hear it. The maid stood stiff, terrified, gripping a broom like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her cheek was darkened by bruises she tried to hide, her arm wrapped in a bandage that looked far too tight to be self-done. And when he touched her shoulders, she didn't flinch because she expected help. She flinched because she expected more pain. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. The room felt smaller. The air felt colder. The Mafia boss notices his maid hiding bruises with a broken arm. What he did next shocked the entire city. Before anything else continues, tell me where you're watching from right now and what time it is over there. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss these fire stories, because what's about to unfold next will blow your mind and shake your entire screen. Stay locked in. He stood there, feeling the tremor in her arm as she tried to hold the broom steady. She didn't dare look at him directly, not even through her swollen eyes. She kept them fixed on the floor as if eye contact would break her. But the Mafia boss wasn't known for patience, nor for subtlety. He wasn't gentle, but he wasn't stupid either. He could tell when a person had been beaten, and he could instantly tell who did the beating. The silence between them wasn't calm. It was pressure, heat, storm, the kind that builds right before lightning hits. He didn't ask who hurt her. He didn't ask why she hid it. He didn't ask why she showed up to work looking like someone had tried to erase her existence. He didn't need to. He only needed to see the single tear that slid down her already bruised cheek, blending into the mess already staining her face. She tried to step away, to create distance, but he held her arm gently, too gently for a man with his reputation, like he couldn't allow her to leave the moment until he understood every detail. She whispered something too faint to catch, something that sounded like an apology. Apologizing for being hurt. Apologizing for existing in pain. Apologizing for bringing chaos into his morning. That did something to him. Something dark. Something he hadn't felt in years. Not since he buried violence deep under an expensive suit and legitimate business facade. He guided her to the dining table, the same place high-ranking criminals had once negotiated millions. He made her sit, though she resisted weakly, insisting she had chores, insisting she was fine. He ignored every word. He sat across from her, staring, studying the trembling in her hands, the way she held her broken arm close to her ribs, as if protecting it from more. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten her, but his silence was far more terrifying. She finally admitted it wasn't an accident. Her voice cracked around the words, each one dropping like a confession she never wanted to say out loud. She never mentioned the name, but that didn't matter because he already knew. Her boyfriend, the man he'd personally warned months ago about his temper. A man who thought no one would ever retaliate because she was just a maid. A man stupid enough to think bruises could be hidden forever. Her breath came rapidly, shallow, almost like she was running out of air just talking about it. She told him how the argument started, how it escalated, how he snapped her arm like it was nothing. She said she had no family to run to, nowhere to stay, and no one who would believe her story. She said she came to work because she needed the job. She said hiding it was her only option. He didn't say a word. He stood up, walked away, leaving her with her head bowed, thinking she'd already said too much, thinking he'd fire her, thinking she'd made a mistake. But the Mafia boss went straight to another room, his private office, where silence didn't exist. It was replaced by the crack of bones, the slam of fists, and curses spat into a phone that trembled in his grip. His men, the ones who handled the dirty work, the ones who never questioned orders, were activated instantly. He reached out to contacts who weren't used unless it was war-level business. He called in debts that had been untouched for years. He wasn't planning a conversation. He wasn't planning a warning. He was planning something so loud the entire city would feel it. When he returned, she was still seated, shoulders shaking, terrified she'd said something she shouldn't have. He leaned down, eye level, but this time with a softness he didn't recognize in himself. He asked her one question, not who hit her, not why she hit it, but whether she trusted him. She hesitated. Then she nodded. He ordered her to stand. She obeyed, though slow and in pain. He walked her toward the hallway, not to dismiss her, but to protect her. He didn't let her work. He didn't let her lift anything. He didn't let her leave the house alone ever again. He placed 2 men at the entrance. He assigned one to shadow her every movement, not to control her, to guard her. She didn't understand what was happening, but he did. He had already declared war. She tried to protest, mumbling that she didn't want trouble, that it wasn't worth it, that she wasn't important enough to cause this kind of chaos. But he cut her off with a sharper tone than before, telling her she didn't have the right to decide what she deserved, telling her she would be kept safe whether she liked it or not, telling her that no one, not one soul, had the right to lay a hand on someone under his roof. Her eyes widened at that sentence. Under his roof, protected by him. He'd never said that to anyone who wasn't blood. Hours passed. She stayed secluded in a guest room while the boss paced through the house, phone glued to his ear, coordinating every detail. Locations were tracked, movements identified. The abuser's car was found near a bar on the east side. His men had eyes on him. A trap was being tightened. But the Mafia boss wasn't done. Before the sun set, half the city already knew something was happening. Streets grew quiet. Criminals canceled appointments. Bars shut early. Even the police started hearing whispers. Because whenever he moved like this, with precision, silence, and rage, something catastrophic followed. Something unforgettable. He stopped in front of the guest room door, listening to her soft, broken breathing from inside. She was asleep, exhaustion knocking her out the moment she felt safe enough to close her eyes. She didn't know that the man responsible for her bruises would not see another sunrise unchanged. She didn't know the city was about to witness a message unlike anything he had ever sent before. But he knew, and he intended to make sure the entire city never forgot what happened to anyone who hurt someone under his protection. He stood outside her door long enough for the silence to start weighing on him, long enough for the anger inside him to settle into something colder, sharper, more lethal than rage. His men were updating him every few minutes. Her abuser was still at the bar, still drinking, still alive, still unaware death was already stalking him from 3 different angles. The boss's fists tightened until the bandages on his own hand pulled against his skin. He didn't look away from the door, from the reminder of why he was doing this. Every bruise on her face felt like an insult carved into his reputation. Every tear she shed replayed like a slap to his own pride. No one hurts someone under his roof. No one touches what he protects. That sentence echoed through him, hotter with every repetition. He finally stepped away, unable to stay still, unable to calm the storm boiling in his veins. His steps were sharp, carrying him down the hall with a pace that signaled war. His phone buzzed, and he answered without stopping. The update was quick and direct. The men had eyes on the target. They were waiting for orders. Not instructions. Orders. The kind that didn't need repeating. He didn't respond immediately, because part of him wanted to go himself. Wanted to be the one to drag that man out by the throat, slam him against the pavement, and show him exactly what the consequences were for laying a hand on a woman who couldn't fight back. But he stayed, not because he was afraid, because he needed to make sure she stayed safe. He needed to be close enough to protect her if anything changed. He needed to control every part of the situation. He turned toward the massive window overlooking the driveway, gripping the frame so hard it creaked. He imagined her sitting at that table earlier, fingers trembling, voice cracking, and a helplessness stabbed at him, an emotion he hadn't felt since childhood. He hated it, hated how she made him feel, hated that her pain mattered so damn much. She wasn't family. She wasn't a lover. She wasn't even someone who'd spoken more than a handful of words to him since she started working. And yet now, protecting her felt like a mission carved into his bones. His phone buzzed again. This time, the update said the target was leaving the bar. Walking alone. Stumbling. Vulnerable. Perfect. He inhaled slowly, letting fury settle into focus. He gave the order. 3 words. Nothing fancy, nothing emotional. But those 3 words were enough to shift the night. Enough to send fear rippling through the criminal underworld. enough to guarantee that the man responsible for her broken arm would regret ever being born. Then he hung up and turned back toward the hallway, toward her room. He walked slowly, carefully, forcing his heartbeat to steady. He pushed the door open quietly. She was curled on the bed, finally asleep, finally breathing without shaking. Her good hand rested near her face, her bandaged arm tucked protectively against her body. Even unconscious, she looked like someone expecting to be hurt again at any second. He stepped inside and sat on the chair near the bed. Watching her wasn't something he planned, but it happened anyway. He watched the rise and fall of her chest. He watched the small flinches every time she dreamt of something too close to reality. She was fragile, not by choice, but by circumstance. And for the first time in years, he felt responsibility tightening around him like a chain he chose to wear. Her breathing hitched, and she murmured his name, soft, broken, like a plea. His jaw clenched. His hand curled into a fist, so hard his nails dug into his palm. He wanted to find the man hurting her, even beyond the one his men were following. Anyone who ever scared her. Anyone who ever yelled at her. Anyone whose shadow ever made her flinch. His phone buzzed again. He didn't want to answer in front of her, but he did. The voice on the other end whispered an update that made adrenaline spike through him. The target was cornered, terrified, asking stupid questions, trying to run, screaming about misunderstanding, begging for forgiveness. He didn't feel satisfaction. He felt nothing but cold. He stood from the chair. She didn't wake, but she shifted, curling tighter into herself. He moved toward the doorway again, standing half inside, half outside the room. That was when he gave the second order, the one that would determine the man's fate, the one that would ensure the entire city remembered this night for a long, long time. After he spoke, the line went silent. Then came the distant echo of chaos through the phone, shouting, movement, impact, muffled gasps. He didn't flinch. He didn't breathe. He let the storm unfold without a single reaction. The noise didn't disturb him. It was justice. It was balance. It was the natural ending for a man who broke bones like they were toys. But before the final blow landed, he stopped it. He ordered them not to finish it. Not yet, because he wanted to see the man himself. He wanted to look him in the eyes. He wanted that coward to understand that the pain she felt was nothing compared to what was coming for him. He walked back into the room, watching her sleep, thinking about the moment she told him she didn't want trouble. She didn't know trouble was already his shadow. She didn't know trouble paid him rent. She didn't know trouble bent its knees when he walked by. When he left the room, he didn't close the door. He wanted her to feel air, not confinement. He wanted her to feel protected, not trapped. His men were waiting in the driveway when he stepped outside. They didn't say a word. They didn't need to. Their expressions were sharp, controlled, ready. A black SUV idled near the gate, the engine rumbling like a growl. The man who hurt her was inside, bound, beaten, terrified, alive for the moment, but questioning if that was a blessing or a curse. The boss walked toward the vehicle slowly, every step measured, every breath heavy with the violence building behind his calm expression. When the door opened, the man inside tried to speak, but fear choked every sound. His face was swollen, his lip cut, his eyes wild. He shrank back when the boss appeared, like a child expecting a monster. The boss stared at him without blinking, letting the silence settle like dust. He thought of her bruised face, her trembling voice, her broken arm. He thought of how she kept apologizing for the pain someone else gave her. And he stepped forward, grabbing the man by his collar and dragging him out of the SUV with strength that felt almost effortless. The man screamed, but the sound didn't travel far. The boss slammed him against the ground, not with rage, but with precision. Cold, controlled, final. The city would feel this. The city would talk about this. The city would whisper his name with fear and respect. But he didn't finish it. Not today. Not yet. Because the maid asleep upstairs deserved to wake up without the sound of vengeance echoing in her ears. She deserved to breathe one peaceful morning before he tore the world apart for her. And tomorrow, the city would learn what happened when a Mafia king declared someone under his protection. He stood over the man, trembling on the ground, breathing hard, not from exhaustion, but from the force it took to hold himself back. Every instinct in him screamed to finish it right there. One move, one moment, one strike. It would have been so easy. Too easy. But he didn't. He stepped back instead, forcing his jaw to unclench, forcing his hands to steady. His men watched him in silence, unsure whether to move, unsure whether to breathe too loudly. They'd seen him angry before, even violent, but this was different. This was controlled fury, the kind that shook a city more than bullets ever could. He gave the order to restrain the man again, not gently, not kindly, but carefully. He wanted agony, not death. Not yet. The man whimpered, tried to kick, tried to plead. None of it mattered. His words were nothing compared to the memory of that Maid whispering apologies for injuries she didn't cause. The boss walked to the SUV, opened the door, and grabbed a cloth from the seat. He wiped his hands slowly, methodically, as if scrubbing off the filth of touching someone so worthless. His phone buzzed again, another update from his men's station around the house. She was still sleeping. She hadn't stirred, hadn't woken, hadn't sensed the violence unfolding outside. He exhaled, a sharp breath that released just enough pressure to let him think again. He didn't want her to see any of this. She had seen enough pain for a lifetime. He ordered his men to take the abuser to the warehouse. The same warehouse where deals were made, where debts were paid, where enemies were remade into examples. They lifted the man easily, ignoring his screams as they shoved him inside the vehicle. The engine revved, the SUV pulled away, and the knights swallowed their departure. The boss didn't follow immediately. He turned and walked back into the house, each step heavy with calculation. Every move now required precision. She was in his care, and he couldn't protect her if he left her vulnerable. He needed to make sure she wasn't afraid of him. He needed to make sure she understood she wasn't just another worker to him. He needed to make sure she felt safe enough to stay. Because now, whether she realized it or not, she was in the center of a storm. He re-entered the quiet hallway and stopped outside her door again. That room had become something sacred in just a few hours. A boundary, a promise. He pushed the door open slowly. She was still curled up, still breathing softly. A small, fragile shape in a world far too cruel for her. Her hair had fallen across her face, partially covering the bruises that still darkened her skin. Even in the dim light, those bruises looked like fresh insults. He stepped closer and brushed the hair away gently, almost like he was afraid she'd shatter at the slightest touch. She didn't wake, but her face relaxed just a little, as if even asleep she recognized when she wasn't in danger. He didn't know why that hit him so hard. Didn't know why his chest tightened, why his breath went uneven for a second. But he didn't pull back. He stayed there for a few heartbeats longer, letting the calm soak into him. Then he straightened and left the room again, leaving the door slightly open like before. His phone buzzed. A single text. Waiting for you. He knew what that meant. The warehouse was ready. The man was tied down. The tools were laid out. The stage was set. He could end this tonight. He could paint the walls with justice and forget the world outside. But something held him back, a pull he wasn't used to, a weight that stopped his feet from moving. He walked to the living room and sank into a chair, elbows on his knees, head hanging low. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about something older, something deeper, something he'd buried beneath years of power and intimidation. He had spent so long pushing people away, so long keeping the world at arm's length, so long refusing to feel anything beyond control. But when he saw her bruises, something cracked open inside him, something he didn't know how to repair or ignore. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling, trying to steady the storm in his blood. He hated the feeling, vulnerability, concern, the urge to protect, the urge to care. He had avoided it all his life for a reason. Emotions made people weak. Emotions got people killed. Emotions made you hesitate, and hesitation was death in his world. He stood abruptly, anger sparking hotter. Not at her, at himself. His steps carried him toward the front door again, but halfway there he stopped because he heard a sound behind him. A soft, faint whimper. He turned fast, instinct sharp, pulse spiking. It came from down the hall. from her room. He walked quickly, pushing the door open. She was awake, but not fully conscious, trapped somewhere between nightmare and reality. Tears streaked down her bruised cheeks. Her breaths came short and shaky. Her good hand clutched the blanket like it was the only thing she had left. He went to her side instantly. She didn't seem to know he was there at first. She whispered something barely audible, a broken plea for someone to stop, a desperate cry for the pain to go away. She recoiled from memories that weren't really there anymore. His jaw tightened. His anger shifted direction instantly. Not toward her, but toward every moment she survived without anyone to protect her. He sat on the bed slowly, making sure not to startle her. He called her name quietly. She reacted. Her eyes flickered open, unfocused at first. Then they found him. Recognition hit her like a breath returning. She froze, then swallowed hard. He saw the fear in her eyes, but it wasn't fear of him. It was fear of the world, fear of waking up, fear of not knowing what would happen next. He could fix that. He told her she was safe. He told her no one would hurt her again. He told her she didn't need to apologize anymore. His voice stayed low, controlled, steady, something she could cling to. Her breathing eased slowly. Her shoulders relaxed. She leaned slightly toward him, not touching him, but close enough to show trust. The kind of trust he didn't deserve but was determined to earn. When her eyes finally closed again, this time without fear, he stayed beside her, watching, listening, protecting. He should have gone to the warehouse. He should have dealt with the abuser. He should have handled business. But he couldn't leave her. Not yet. His men would keep the bastard alive. He'd make sure the punishment was delivered personally. But tonight, right now, this moment, this mattered more. Because she had no one else. And for reasons he couldn't explain, couldn't control, couldn't deny, he wasn't going anywhere. He stayed beside her far longer than he meant to, watching her breathing even out, watching the tension slowly slip from her bruised face as sleep finally took her without dragging nightmares behind it. For a man who ruled an entire city with fear, who controlled empires built on blood and power, it was unsettling how lightly his hand hovered near her, how careful he was not to disturb her rest. The same hands that had broken bones, ended wars, and silenced enemies were now scared of brushing against the skin of a fragile Maid who didn't even know how much she'd changed the temperature of his world. He rose only when he was certain she wouldn't wake in terror again. His muscles felt tight, his mind torn between two battlegrounds, the room he was leaving and the warehouse waiting for him. He stepped out quietly and closed the door halfway, letting the warm hall light spill inside. He wanted her to wake up with some kind of comfort, some sign she wasn't alone. The moment he walked downstairs, the storm in him snapped awake again. His phone buzzed 3 times in a row. His men were growing impatient. The abuser had passed out from fear, then woken again, screaming, then passed out once more. They were waiting for the boss to decide the fate they were all hungry to deliver. He grabbed the keys from the table and walked outside, shutting the door behind him with a controlled click. As soon as fresh air hit his face, the rage he'd been holding back surged through his veins again. The car engine roared, and he sped down the road like the night itself was urging him forward. Every streetlight flashed across his windshield like the ticking of countdown. By the time he reached the warehouse district, he wasn't even breathing normally. He was breathing like a man going to war. His men stood in a loose formation near the entrance when he pulled up, stepping aside instantly. They didn't speak. They didn't greet him. They simply moved. The large door slid open, and the metallic echo of it rolling against the tracks shot adrenaline straight through him. The moment he stepped inside, the smell of blood hit the air. The abuser was tied to a reinforced chair in the center of the room, hands bound behind him, ankles strapped down, head hanging forward. A quick breath revealed he was still conscious, just barely. Someone had splashed water on him moments earlier, judging by the wet floor. He shivered, teeth chattering, face swollen from the beating he'd already received. He lifted his head slowly, and when he saw who walked in, pure terror split his expression open. The boss didn't approach him right away. He walked around him first, slow and silent, like a predator circling prey. Every step made the tied man flinch. Every breath made him tremble harder. He stopped behind the chair. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse. He didn't yell. His words came out low, steady, and lethal. The kind of voice that made grown men confess sins they hadn't even committed yet. The abuser broke instantly, crying, begging, shaking so violently the chair rattled beneath him. The boss didn't react to a single word, because he remembered the maid in his house, her bruised face, her shaking hands, her whispered apologies. This man didn't deserve forgiveness. He didn't deserve mercy. He didn't deserve the air he was breathing. But killing him now? Too easy, too quick, too clean. Pain had to be earned, but so did suffering. And the boss wasn't done deciding which one this man deserved. He stepped in front of him finally, and the abuser shrank back as far as the restraints allowed. He looked like a cornered animal, desperate to escape, desperate to survive. The boss stared at him long enough to make him choke on his own sobs. Then he grabbed the man by the throat, not squeezing, just holding, forcing eye contact. He said one sentence. It silenced the entire warehouse. The abuser froze, breath caught halfway, color draining from his face. His eyes widened until they showed the full whites around the irises. He tried to shake his head, but the boss didn't loosen his grip. He leaned in closer, voice dropping even lower, outlining exactly what this man had done. Every bruise on her face. Every time she begged for him to stop. Every time she had hidden pain out of fear. Every moment she was alone, crying quietly somewhere no one noticed. The boss listed each one like he'd memorized them, like he felt each one himself. By the time he finished speaking, the abuser had crumbled into incoherent pleas. His words weren't even sentences anymore, just noise, panic, spit, and desperation. The boss let go of his throat and stepped back, wiping his hand on a rag like the touch contaminated him. His men waited, every single one of them ready to carry out whatever order came next. But he didn't give it. Not yet, because suddenly something hit him, something unexpected, unwanted, unwelcome. A flash of her face. Not the bruises, not the tears, but the moment she looked at him before falling asleep again. The trust. Fragile, shaking, but real. She wouldn't want him to come home drenched in blood. She wouldn't want this kind of justice, not in the way he was planning to give it. He hated that the thoughts slowed him down. He hated that she had that kind of power over his decisions. He hated that he cared, but he wasn't going to ignore it. Not tonight. He told his men to untie the abuser's legs. The man's panic spiked, thinking he was about to be executed. But instead, the boss grabbed him by the back of the neck, hauled him out of the chair, and slammed him against the cold wall with a force that made dust fall from the rafters. The impact knocked the breath out of the man, leaving him shaking, barely conscious. The boss leaned close, whispering something only the man could hear. His men strained to listen, but the abuser heard it clearly, and whatever words were spoken turned his legs to water. The boss ordered them to drag him away, keep him alive, keep him contained, keep him suffering, but nothing permanent. Nothing final. Not until he decided the final punishment. Not until he finished sorting out the battlefield inside his own chest. The men obeyed instantly, pulling the half-conscious man out of the room. His screams echoed as they carried him down the hallway, fading into distant, trembling noise. The warehouse emptied until only the boss remained inside, breathing hard, hands shaking with leftover adrenaline he hadn't released. He slammed his fist into a metal table. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound thundered through the room. He didn't stop until the rage inside him finally splintered into something quieter, something heavier. He walked out slowly, locking the warehouse behind him. He didn't look back. He drove home without turning on the radio, without checking his phone, without answering any messages. The road blurred under the tires as his mind spiraled back toward the fragile girl sleeping in one of his guest rooms. When he finally pulled into the driveway, he saw a light on upstairs. Her room. His heart dropped. No, more like slammed. He got out of the car faster than he meant to and entered the house in long, urgent strides. He moved down the hall like a man preparing for anything, every sense alert, every muscle ready. He reached her door and stopped. He pushed it open. She was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes swollen, tears clinging to her lashes. And the first thing she whispered when she saw him walk and made his entire world tilt in ways he wasn't prepared for. She asked where he went, not out of suspicion, not out of fear, but because she didn't want to be alone. The moment the gunshot echoed, everything inside the warehouse froze. Every heartbeat, every breath, every last lie that had brought them all to this breaking point. The men who had been shouting a second ago went silent as the dust settled around the figure collapsing to the ground. And she stood there, trembling, sweat running down her spine, hands still shaking from the weight of what she had just done, knowing there was no turning back now. This was the moment she had been running from, the moment every choice had been leading toward, the moment that tore away the last layer of fear she carried. And she knew the storm wasn't finished. Not yet. He stared at her from across the room, wounded but alive, blood staining his shirt, eyes locked on hers with a mixture of shock and something deeper, something painful, something human. The man everyone feared was suddenly stripped bare in front of her. He didn't yell. He didn't rage. He didn't demand. He simply looked at her as if trying to understand why she had chosen him, chosen this, when survival would have meant abandoning him entirely. But she stayed. She stayed for reasons she didn't even want to admit to herself yet. The crew that had betrayed him stepped back, unsure now, suddenly aware that the tide had turned in a way none of them expected. The man on the ground groaned, clutching his bleeding shoulder. She dropped the gun, letting it clatter hard across the floor, the echo loud enough to send one of the traitors flinching. Her voice cracked as she told them all to back away. And they did, because whatever had just shifted in that room was bigger than fear, bigger than pride, bigger than all their twisted loyalties. Something had broken, and something new was forming in its place. He pushed himself upright, pain burning across his face, and she immediately moved toward him even though every instinct told her to keep distance. Her hands hovered inches from him. She was afraid to touch him, afraid of how he would react, afraid of what she might feel if she did. But he leaned into her anyway, just slightly, just enough, and her world nearly collapsed at the weight of it. His breath hitched. Hers did too, and she helped him stand. One of the men tried to run. Bad choice. He turned cold again, even through the pain, barking an order with enough authority to freeze the air. His loyal enforcers, the ones who hadn't turned, caught the runner before he made it 2 steps. The man begged, cried, screamed that he didn't mean it, that it was a mistake, that he was tricked. But excuses weren't going to save anyone anymore. Not after the blood spilled. Not after the betrayal laid bare. Not after he almost died. The traitors were dragged forward. All of them, kneeling, shaking, pleading. And she stood there, heart heavy, watching the man she had saved fight through waves of pain and fury and heartbreak. This wasn't just revenge, this was consequence. He asked each of them why. They gave every answer except the truth. Cowardice, greed, envy, panic. But the truth was simple. When power shifts, loyalty breaks. And they thought he was slipping. They thought he was done. They thought he was weak. They were wrong. He passed judgment, voice calm and terrifying. But something unexpected happened. When they reached the last traitor, the one who orchestrated it all, the one who tried to kill her, he didn't pull the trigger. He didn't order anyone else to either. He looked at her instead. The room held its breath as the weight of the decision fell into her hands. She stared at the man on his knees, the one who had grabbed her hair, slammed her head against concrete, tried to use her as leverage. Rage clawed inside her, hot and violent. But so did exhaustion. So did the part of her that didn't want another permanent stain on her conscience. She told him to leave. Not spared, not forgiven, just exiled. No return, no second chances. And her voice was steady enough that nobody questioned it. The traitor didn't believe his luck, didn't wait. He ran until his footsteps vanished beyond the broken warehouse walls. His eyes lingered on her again, studying her like he was relearning her all over, like he was seeing someone he hadn't expected to exist. Someone with fire, someone with a conscience stronger than the violence around them. Someone who saved his life and still refused to become hardened by it. But the moment of softness didn't last. Sirens whispered in the distance. They had minutes, maybe less, and the place was filled with bodies, blood, and more evidence than anyone could talk their way out of. His men scrambled to burn whatever they could, dragging pallets, dumping gasoline, scattering papers. Smoke filled the air as the flames caught. Sparks danced across the floor, and she grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the spreading fire, holding him steady when his knees buckled from blood loss. They reached the exit together, stumbling into the cold night air as shouts and alarms blared far off in the industrial stretch of the city. He leaned against a car, chest rising sharply, breath unsteady, dripping blood down his side. She cupped his face with trembling hands, whispering that he wasn't allowed to die. Not after everything they'd fought through. Not after she finally chose to stop running. He almost smiled. Almost. But his eyes were too heavy, too tired, too full of things he had never told anyone. His men rushed him into the vehicle, and she climbed in beside him without hesitating. But as the car sped off, flashing lights appeared behind them, blue and red streaking through the night. Justice wasn't only coming for the traitors. It was coming for him too. For all of them. And she realized in that split second that saving him tonight meant stepping into a future she couldn't predict, couldn't control, couldn't escape from anymore. He grabbed her hand, weak but deliberate, like he needed her to know that no matter what happened next, running, hiding, fighting, rebuilding, he wasn't letting go. And she held on just as tight because she wasn't letting go either. The weight of everything they had survived sat between them. Pain, violence, betrayal, loyalty, and something dangerously close to love. It was messy. It was wrong. It was intense. It was real. The sirens grew louder. His voice finally broke the silence, soft and raw, as he told her that whatever came next, she needed to be ready. Because saving him tonight didn't close the chapter, it opened a war. A war with consequences bigger than either of them could imagine. A war that would pull her into a world she never meant to enter. A war where every choice could cost them everything. But she didn't flinch. She told him she'd stay. And for the first time since the chaos began, he actually believed her. The car disappeared into the dark, swallowed by night, chased by consequences neither of them could escape. And just like that, the story they thought was ending was only beginning to ignite again, louder, hotter, and far more dangerous than before. In the aftermath of betrayal, bloodshed, and impossible choices, she discovered her own strength and stepped into a world she never expected. Saving him changed everything. Her future, her heart, her destiny. And as they raced into the night, one truth remained. This fire was only getting started. Sometimes the people we try hardest to run from are the ones who force us to confront who we really are. Loyalty is tested in chaos, but character is revealed in the choices made when everything is falling apart. Hit subscribe now, drop a comment, share this story everywhere, and get ready, because the next chapter will be even more insane than this. Don't miss what comes next.